Today, we're pleased and excited to welcome Daiva Naldal for this segment of our Thought Leadership series, Coffee with Kal.
Yes.
Daiva, thank you for being here with us today. I know it's a little bit late in your day, and it should probably be a glass of wine that you're holding up, not necessarily a cup of coffee.
Coffee helps, thank you. Very, very happy to be there.
So today we're going to be discussing how Lego used crowdsourcing to boost their brand. Daiva, you and I have had some great discussions over the past number of months. Super excited to continue those conversations today. Before we get into our chat, I must say, growing up playing with Legos, I've really been looking forward to our conversation. I mean, the Legos of today are way cooler than the ones that I grew up with in the 70s, from Transformers, you can see one behind me, to, to planes. I mean, they're just, and a shout out to my nephew Harmon. He's way more interested in STEM these days than he was obsessed with Legos at some point. I don't even think he knows that I borrowed some of his little works of art here. So, but really, it just speaks to the power of crowdsourcing. And, who would have thought that Lego would have been crowdsourcing their Lego set designs? I mean, it's a toy. But before we get too far into our discussion, let's get started with some introduction. I can get us kicked off. As I mentioned, my name is Kal Sahota. My role with the HeroX team is the VP of Possibilities, which is really just a fun way of saying that I get the pleasure of connecting with organizations all over the globe to speak to them about their innovation strategies, how to implement crowd as a key component of that strategy. My background, very much traditional business, 25 years in financial services. Our HeroX team is virtual, but I'm physically located in beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia, which has been a bit snowy over the past few days, but still very much beautiful. So, Daiva, over to you. Offer us a quick introduction.
All right, thank you, Kal. Well, so greetings from Denmark, and which is not so beautiful weather tonight. A bit rainy and dark, but nevertheless, a good atmosphere. So I'm Daiva Naldal, and today I work as the Open Innovation and Business Development Advisor, helping companies, big and small, to discover and realize opportunities through open innovation to grow their brand and businesses, and very much so involving the brand communities into their journey. So for the last 13 years, I had the pleasure to work for one of the best brands in the world, Lego, and in totally for the last 20 years in various marketing and innovation positions.
Good stuff. Thank you so much again for being here. And before we get into our questions, I always like to lay out a couple of ground rules. So firstly, bring your authentic self, be bold, and make sure that we have fun today. Sound good?
Yes, you can count on that.
Good stuff. Okay, Daiva, so let's get into our questions. So you're a huge believer in the power of the collective mind, in other words, crowdsourcing. So tell us a little bit about why.
Right, correct. So when answering the why, I would like to use three elements, or three words. First of all, democracy. The second, trust. And the third one, impact. Because I believe that the crowdsourcing and open innovation actually stands for the three together. So when thinking about democracy, so most of us live, or many of us live in the democratic society today, and we value the principles of it, right? The opportunities that it provides with the freedom of speech, opportunities to equal rights for vote and participation. And so there's the crowdsourcing. It's actually based on the same principle. Now, when talking about the trust, usually many decisions in our lives we use to sort of advise our family and our closest friends. But I think recently the circle of trust has expanded enormously. Today, if you think about, we would go to a TripAdvisor and consult completely random crowd of strangers to influence our choice of next holiday destination, right? So, and I believe this growing trust in the humanity and the relationships, it's also very much important when we go into the future. And it's also the essence of the crowdsourcing, right? The trusting the collective opinion of the crowd. And certainly it's about impact. So imagine having a team of hundreds or thousand experts to work on your challenge and your idea. So I would like to use this very provocative and very clever quote that I don't recall the author of, but I hope he or she will forgive me for that. But it actually says, so no matter how great the innovation team you have in-house, you have always to remember that 99.9% of the most talented people still don't work for you. Right? And that's kind of summarized why I believe that open innovation and crowdsourcing is the future of innovation and the general ways of how we work together.
That's such a great answer, such an inspiring answer, actually. You know, I find when I ask that question, there's always a really interesting story behind it. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Now let's talk a little bit about how that might work real time, as they say, on the court. So specifically, what types of skills or resources from your perspective are required in-house by organizations to successfully support crowdsourcing projects?
That's a big question. Well, I think before we dive into the skills and resources and tools, there's another sort of element to mention, which is very essential. And I think that's about the mindset. Because going open, so to say, it requires change of the mindset. We have to embrace the situation about losing the control of total process, right? That's the first step. And then, of course, it requires a set of skills and resources and capabilities. But in general, what it really entails is requires the ability to engage and cultivate a meaningful relationship with the crowd and build a community of interest. So, and provide experiences that people would enjoy taking part of, right? And these skills, of course, can be built in-house, or they can also be outsourced to the expert teams like yours and HeroX. They actually can provide a set of skills and tools and resources on demand for anyone just entering the space of crowdsourcing, right?
Got that. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk a bit about your experience in building communities. So let's offer our audience a little bit of background. When you crowdsource, there are those who are looking to solve problems, oftentimes brands and organizations. They would be the ones to launch these crowdsourcing projects, or oftentimes referred to as simply launching a challenge. Then there are those who actually come to compete, and they're oftentimes referred to as innovators, solvers, or community, or quite simply crowd. You've been crowdsourcing for a number of years, and given the positions that you've held, particularly at Lego, so what strategies have you successfully used to build and grow those communities or crowd to drive the participation in your challenges?
Good question. So as you mentioned, for the last about 5 years, I've been heading the Lego Ideas, which is the crowdsourcing experience and the program that is tailored for the true fans of Lego, for the fan community, to engage and also providing opportunity to crowdsource the ideas for new product sets and also for creative marketing content. So when thinking about the experience, so at the core of experience again is the principle or the strategy providing the meaningful relationship. So the relationship and engagement journey that actually delivers value to both sides. So it has to be the win-win situation, delivering value both to like every individual and the community taking part in it, and also to the company. because only within the win-win that we all win, so to say, right? So I think that's sort of the core principles of how we build the experience. Then the other part of it, which is also important, I think, it's the linking it into the organization, into sort of being able to integrate the value created through the crowdsourcing into the company, into the entire value chain. So I think that's sort of the success of Lego Ideas lies in the ability actually to look across and to deliver sort of the total value chain from the onboarding of the new users to creating experiences, and then to sort of integrating that into the company, and then sort of celebrating that together.
So how do you actually get that crowd to come to Lego Ideas, or I should say did? Was it primarily through social? What is it that you offer? Did you offer, I don't know, product discounts and encourage people if they actually participated? Just curious a little bit about how that actually worked.
Well, I think so. What we realized sort of on the Lego Ideas, the crowd is taking part. Of course, they have the common interest and the common passion into the Lego brand and the Lego brick as a building system. So as the sort of the shared features, you could say, of any community of interest and passion is, right? So that people want to connect, they want to share the ideas, and they want to influence, right? So providing that opportunity to connect both with the company, but together among themselves, also share the creativity, share the ideas, and influence, you could say, each other, but also the company on the choice of the next product or on the next marketing story. It's also the big motivation for the brand community actually to participate and take part. I think so it's not always like the discounts and the big money prize that motivates one to participate. I think the power of influence is actually as valuable as anything else, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're probably well aware of this, but I know there was a Harvard Innovation Lab study done a few years back now, and they actually identified that money was actually number 3 for motivators, closely tied to fun. So I think 1 was to learn a new skill. Number 2 was to make a difference or an impact. Number 3 was to win a monetary prize. But again, it was really closely tied to number 4, which was to simply have fun. So absolutely aligned with you on that, for sure. So,
and I think it's also about sort of, like you say, getting recognized for your skills and your input. It's also a very big motivation factor. And that's sort of like we did our best at the when I was at the Lego group, also actually to embrace that creativity and the passion and those skills, as you mentioned, of the fan community.
So how large is the Lego Ideas community now? I'm just curious.
So last year, I think we rounded like 1 million members. That's a big number, in about like 500,000 monthly unique visitors. So, and that means, and that actually delivers, thousands of great projects, ideas for the new products, and a bunch of wonderful content that then we share and utilize through our marketing stories on the channels as well.
So that's perfect segue into learning a little bit more about the actual crowd that Lego has. So just roughly, what is like the geographic breakdown? What are the different types? And I know you touched on this a little bit already as far as skill sets are concerned, but I'm just curious, like, is it global? Is it focused purely in the European market? Tell me a little bit more about their crowd.
So we did some studies, of course, to understand our audiences. Then we realized that so in terms of geographies, we have like a big share coming from the US, and then from Western European countries as well. And then smaller portion from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And also looking at the profiles of people, you could say they vary a lot. And thinking about the background, so we have both sort of engineers and teachers and artists and students and
Mm.
teenagers and gardeners, all the shape and form. And that's what is sort of creates the magic, because combining sort of their passion and maybe their sort of skill of mastering the Lego building system and their profession, then combining those together, it actually creates a new solutions, like the new magical ideas that you could say the company would have never thought of before.
Absolutely. And the percentage, I think, is close to or over 70% of the most disruptive ideas will come from those outside of their area of expertise. So,
Right.
Again, the whole premise behind crowdsourcing is that you're literally tapping into the creativity of the entire crowd. And you literally have no idea where your best and most creative ideas live. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I can imagine.
And sometimes those ideas would kind of surprise you. So
Yeah.
the little bird, like that they have, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It looks very realistic, right? And sort of creating a series of birds would never probably
So
have.
that was a crowdsourced design?
Yeah, exactly. That also came from the Lego
Oh,
idea.
wow.
One example, and it actually was sort of delivered. The idea submitted by a gardener, of course, who sort of
Oh, wow.
and the birds. So of course, behind each of thing is that also each of the product is also a great story, and the great story is actually that connects us and creates like the shared interest as well.
Well, that's first of all, what a diverse crowd. Um, that's great. Again, so let's preface our next question with a bit of background for our audience, just so we can frame it a little bit.
Yeah.
So one of the distinctions of HeroX is that we're positioned as a social network for innovation. So what that means is this: that if you think back to the social networks that you're most familiar with, like the Facebooks and the LinkedIns of the world, first and foremost, you get your homepage on HeroX. You post all of your crowdsourcing projects on your homepage, and the crowd that you build stays on your homepage, no different than all of your contacts live on your LinkedIn profile. The more projects you run, the larger your crowd gets.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with that in mind, I would be interested in getting your insights and perspective on the significance of having a brand and an open crowd on the social network for innovation versus building a crowd on an organization's site, such as Lego. And what, if any, limitations do you see there?
Good question, Kal. Oh, well, I believe and I think there are strengths in both solutions, because it's all very much sort of linked to the purpose that you have and the task that you want to solve, right? So thinking the Lego case, the goal is to connect and develop the interest community around the Lego brand and nurture and sort of evolve the relationships between the community members, but also between the company um, and the community. So, and for that purpose, I think that having sort of a destination community and then, the destination sort of a platform that is linked with the company perfectly makes sense. Then on the other hand, sort of like when you have a task or a challenge, or you look for ideas or solutions that would benefit from a different set of skills and in new eyes, so to say, that could be brought by a broader or variety of crowds. That probably is a good solution to bring it to the social innovation platforms that then entail that opportunity to bring a different type of crowds together. Make sense?
Interesting perspective. Yeah, definitely, right? There's value to both sides of it for sure.
Right.
So now taking things out of the conceptual a little bit, can you possibly share some examples of how you've seen brands tapping into engaged communities and crowdsourcing platforms to strengthen, let's just say, their innovation muscles? So which brands do you see really leaning into that?
I think there are a number of brands and organizations that actually utilizing the open innovation and crowdsourcing successfully. And I think that sort of trend evolved through the last decade. Um, so if you think in just like simple opportunities to say like consumer brands like McDonald's and Starbucks, they lean to the user community for the feedback and for the inputs, both to source the new recipes, but also to change or improve their experiences. Then if you think about sort of the companies as Procter and Gamble with their program that is called Connect and Develop that has been running for some time now. So they are different sort of divisions. They post a specific challenges or topics from their areas that they have interest in collecting in sort of innovations, both from individuals but also from startups and other providers. So that has been also sort of running successfully for some years now. And I think the other good example would be Amazon and their right? So sourcing, crowdsourcing the product reviews and even ideas for new opportunities for Amazon. It really helps to guide, the shopper journeys and in their product choices. And recently, I've sort of Tesla is actually sourcing the data, of the performance of their vehicles to improve their future sort of vehicle features and designs as well. So, and even MIT and NASA, those sort of organizations where you think they really have like a muscle or good teams of very talented and creative people. They also reach out to other crowds and communities for new ideas to solve their particular challenge. And I really like your story about, this, your previous challenge about the poop in the space. Right? So you really have some special challenges that where you need to new eyes and a new crowd to bring solutions.
You know what I really got out of what you just shared there is the range of brands and industries that you really spoke to, from government organizations such as NASA to educational organizations such as MIT, Harvard, Procter and Gamble. So you have consumer goods. I mean, there's just, from what you've talked, I mean, the car industry with Elon Musk and Tesla, it really is everywhere, isn't it? Exactly. And I think once you start really looking into it and digging into it, you start to realize that, it's actually become, a key staple of any organization's business practice, at least those that have started to lean into it and move forward. So now, Daiva, in your experience, now you were with Lego for a number of years, but now you're also, do extremely well as an innovation consultant. So with your looking through that lens, because you have the luxury of having those really great conversations, where do you see brands and organizations struggling to implement these initiatives as it relates to crowdsourcing?
Right. Let's start with a fear of losing control. I think that's sort of one of the sort of barriers, or one of the first barriers that actually prevents some companies and organizations actually tapping into open innovation and crowdsourcing, because that requires sort of like opening up the process, but also not always being certain sort of what outcome of the journey would be, and you can get surprised by the results, right, in one or the other way. So being able to take that and to embrace that It actually takes some courage. Then the other thing, I think, which is like became a bit of a myth in the industry, that the crowdsourcing and open innovation is very complex and complicated
Yes.
process, right? And
Yes.
it certainly doesn't have to be so, right? As it was maybe 20 years ago, now we have the best practices. We have a variety of platforms and companies that provide the service to facilitate sort of the whole
Yeah.
experience and to provide that expertise. And then the third, maybe also think like, well, it's just the value of it is so unclear, right? So why do we want to go there?
Right.
And I think just look at the ideas, right? I mean, it actually happened to create a sustainable business, which then could be documented in numbers and ROI, right? And also the all the data says that, let's say, user generated content outperforms everything else. And building the relationship between the brands and the community or the end user actually requires to build that connection going forward. So I would say building the connections and relationship is like it's almost a must rather than a choice.
Yeah, you know, that you raise a really interesting point is when something that might be considered a nuance or something unique comes around, at first it's viewed as a bit cutting edge and don't know what the value is, you know, much like social media, right? Social media came on, God, I don't even know how many years ago now, but I remember way back, I mean, I'm old. I'm 49. So I mean, I have a bit of a perspective on, you know, how things have moved so much. But I remember when social media came about, it occurred for me very much like a fad. And I would imagine that a lot of the leadership in a lot of the brands and organizations, it probably occurred much the same. But what it's turned into is it's turned into the way to market. And, you know, so when you have ideas and you have new ways of approaching business, and there is a passion around it, and there is a tremendous amount of talk around it, and as you've already alluded to, data that shows the success, if you don't lean that way, more often than not, hindsight's 2020, I have it that there's going to be a level of regret or that fear of that you've gotten left behind.
Yeah.
You know, so new things come out because we're a progressive world, and I mean, we know the exponential curve is getting steeper and steeper, so things are moving quicker and quicker, and this really allows organizations to keep up.
Yes, I agree.
The other side of that question, and you've touched on it a little bit already because you made a great point about the mindset of an organization. So when you look at how brands have successfully implemented crowdsourcing as a part of their innovation strategies, what have they done differently? Maybe there's 2 or 3 things that, you know, those that are part of our audience today can potentially focus in on to move forward with that.
It's like you say, you know, first the sort of having the mindset is the precondition of everything else as well, and support by the leadership. And then I think looking at sort of a number of successful cases, you could see like maybe there are 3 to 4 sort of common traits. And first of all, I think what's important to succeed is, I would say, being very clear about the purpose, right? And being very clear about the task. So what I'm trying to achieve with the crowdsourcing goal, involving the outside communities in your journey, so to say. Secondly, I think it's also very clear rules of engagement. So clear expectations to each other. So that, like, what are the steps to be taking and what is the expected outcome and so forth. And third is simplicity. It sounds like simple, but you know, right? But having sort of like an seamless user journeys and sort of easy to navigate, but also simply, easy to operate experiences as well. That actually makes a difference. And I probably would like to add the first one, which is like, which actually talks about the longevity of the relationship. So it's being able to close the loop. So sort of imagine asking, thousands or hundreds of people to use their time and their skill and their interest to provide some input or provide some ideas. It's a sort of it comes with the responsibility then to the company or to the organization receiving that to deliver the feedback, right? Whether good or bad, whether you will use the outcome or not. I think it's important to close the loop and give the response and give the feedback to the community. So it will secure sort of your relationship and the goodwill going forward as well.
So really, just to paraphrase kind of what you've shared, is building simple and easy processes around what it is that you're up to, I think is really important. And and to your point, oftentimes when something is new, it can occur as complicated, and then it's complicated, and then we can further complicate it. Yes. And we make it even more complicated because we're unsure. But the interesting thing that I've found is, I mentioned in my introduction, my background is 25 years in corporate. So, very much get the corporate mindset and the boardrooms and the hierarchies and everything else. But, when I came into this space, I was looking for that complexity.
For complexity.
That can't be it. That's it. Where people put out an idea and then, or ask a question, and then the crowd comes and responds, and the best idea wins the solution, and away you go. It can't possibly be that simple, but it really was. And it's simple, yet it's powerful. And you're right, having a lot of those platforms such as HeroX and Topcoder and a number of other platforms available now really supports in simplifying what that potential journey looks like. So Daiva, rounding out our set of questions, so let's go into our final question. We've recently ushered in a new decade. Can't believe it, but we have. And from your perspective, with 2 decades of experience in marketing and open innovation, what excites you the most about the next 10 years?
Right. Well, no doubt. No doubt that open innovation, crowdsourcing, and principles and practices would be very relevant for this and the upcoming decade. Because we're living in the world now where we have to solve pretty challenging or pretty big challenges, both with the climate, but we also really want to create more sustainable living going forward, and that requires a better connection and a better dialogue, you could say, between the individual and business and governments, and it definitely requires the sort of shared talent and shared resources to solve that. So so when I'm thinking, so I'm very hopeful, and I'm very excited about to see actually the growth of the connected communities all over the places, actually embarking on the mission to create a sustainable future. And I truly believe that the future is and has to be both co-created and the co-owned. That was a high note, man.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a wonderful close to the question. That's a really great comment. So let's leave a bit of time now for questions. I know our audience has already dropped in a few. Daiva, what did you enjoy most about working with Lego?
Oh my God, most. I think the most is about the sort of endless opportunities within the creative system. So that it provides, and also, of course, being part of, you could say, very innovative and very creative team. So no day at the office was the same. So it actually sort of allow one to develop and actually find new opportunities all the time.
Great. All right, let's see what else we have here. When you ran challenges, how many ideas would you get for any given challenge?
So let's say, if we think about, sometimes we post the challenges for, let's say, for a new content, right? Whether it's video or photography or sort of like creative builds. I think it's sort of varies, and you could sometimes get like everything from 100 to 1,000 of ideas through the period of like 4 to 6 weeks. That's how we sort of the normal like timing for a specific challenge would be.
Got it. And really, I think from the challenges, I'll jump onto that a little bit, that we've hosted on the HeroX platform. Interestingly enough, we haven't really found there to be a correlation between the number of submissions and the quality of submissions.
Exactly.
And right, so I find that oftentimes clients will say, you know, how many submissions do I need to make sure that it's successful? And you know, we like to use an example of, we had one client where, I mean, with the NASA Space Poop Challenge, I think we had 5,000. It was just crazy, the amount. I mean, it went viral across so many news agencies. But there was one challenge that we hosted that they had all but 15. But all 15 were so rock solid that the challenge sponsor actually had a difficult, challenging time awarding the winner. Right. Because all of them were just so incredible. So I mean, maybe over time there will be some form of a correlation, but in the over 6 years that we've seen on the platform and all the data that we've seen so far, not necessarily, because some challenges are quite obscure and require a really unique skill set. Yeah. Others can be really broad and just give us your best idea, and most anybody can compete. Yeah. So, all right, so we have one more question here. It's a little bit of a long one, so let's see. I'm in leadership in a larger organization. It's so clear to me that crowdsourcing and innovation strategies are not only relevant, but a necessity. Coming from a larger brand, how do you suggest I have those discussions with leadership? Should I ask for one-on-one meetings with the C-suite? Should I do it at a strategy or board meeting? In your personal experience, what do you think works best?
That's a very good question. And I think it's a sort of this strategy of selling that into organization, of course, very much depends on the organization. It's difficult to advise on the specifics, so please reach out to me after the session. But I think linking into the strategy you have would be a good starting point, because I'm sure you have some tasks and some challenges you would like to solve through the strategy, and some of those could potentially be helped by onboarding some of the principles and techniques of the open innovation and crowdsourcing. And that would be a very sort of reasonable and reliable path. In addition to that, usually what we realize that onboarding onto sort of open innovation and crowdsourcing brings new opportunities, incremental sort of business areas and incremental opportunities that you haven't seen before. And I would sort of see that, you know, everybody would like to grow their business and expand their business. And thirdly, but not lastly, all the good cases, showing the benefits of it and showing how it can be developed within the larger organizations like Lego could potentially support your case and your journey in the selling in.
And this is what you do all day, every day as an innovation consultant. So, So listen, Daiva, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule today to participate in our webinar. I mean, you clearly have a wealth of knowledge and experience. We wish you continued success with your new innovation and consulting business. For those who are attending today's webinar, if you'd like to learn more about how you can leverage the power of the crowd within your innovation strategies, reach out to us directly. We can schedule in a complimentary educational workshop. And with that, on behalf of Daiva and I, thank you so very much for taking the time to join us today. Have a wonderful rest of your day.